It's Wednesday, and here we are again. Today's topic, we're going to be talking about how do you deal with underperformance, especially in a circumstance where you're a sales leader and you've got a member of your team who's just lagging behind or not able to achieve the results in line with what you would want, hope, and expect for them. So this is never an easy situation and circumstance to be in. And so the natural starting point here is you've got to really seek to understand why. You've got to take a moment to really have a conversation with that person and seek to understand why are they underperforming. And as simple as this might sound, sometimes this is a step that just doesn't happen, right? Especially if you've got a larger team, it's easy to sometimes look at all of the metrics, look at all of the people on your team and just say, well, there's a few outliers that are underperforming, they just haven't got it. And that just isn't the right way to do things. Ultimately, you've got to take a moment to really investigate. And sometimes what can be surprising, and I've been in this situation where you actually go and have a conversation with that person and they just might be having some home challenges at home. Maybe they're going through a really stressful period for a certain reason and we just didn't know because we didn't ask the question. So step number one is really seek to understand why. The next step is then you've got to come up with some kind of action plan collaboratively. One of the big challenges, and again, I went through this myself where before I had experimented with being more authoritative with saying, well, this is what needs to happen in order to move things forward, versus taking more of a collaborative approach, which I then experimented with and found more success, which is actually working with that person. Now that we've understood why we feel that there's a gap in their ability to perform, it's saying, well, actually, here's a suggestion for how we could potentially get out of this phase. What do you think? Does this feel like it's something that would work well, right, in line with your just general state and where you are at the moment and with the plan that you've set yourself to be successful? And by trying to have some form of collaboration here versus enforcement, it actually encourages that person to better really align with the plan. When it feels like it's more of a dictatorship or this is what you have to do and you've got no other choice, sometimes that can create friction. And that friction then makes it difficult for that person to go and execute on the plan itself. And so it's really important where there are opportunities to do so, to try and find room for collaboration, or at least to create an environment that feels collaborative with that member of staff, to put them in a position where they feel a little bit more bought into their own success. The next phase of that, which is a slight pivot, is to try and work with them to reconnect with their why, right? Everyone has a why for why they've turned up to work. Everyone has a why for why they're doing what they're doing right now. And the better you can help them reconnect with that reason and that sense of purpose, the better opportunity you'll have for that person to actually stay consistent with this new plan. So also, just as a little bonus and a pivot, take a moment to really help them to rediscover that reason, whether it's personal or whether it's professional, because that will act as their fuel for moving forward. The last point I'll make on this is that ultimately you want to be able to make decisions, key decisions of this nature, quite quickly, right? In the sense that what you can't do is, if you've gone through this process and you've just got someone who either doesn't have the will and the desire to actually grow and improve, or just after time after time after time, they're just showing that this is not the right thing for them. Really, you're actually doing that person a disservice the longer that they stay in the role. Because if it's not the right thing for them, it's not serving them, it's not serving you and the organization, it's really a disservice to have them sit in that role any longer than they need to. And so there are some scenarios where ultimately you've got to make that decision to say, you would be better placed elsewhere, where you can actually go out there, realize your potential and be successful. It really comes back to that saying, sometimes you've got to encourage someone or create a scenario where you fail fast, right? As a sales leader, you may need to take, you need to take accountability, right? If you made that hire, you made that decision, you thought you saw something, maybe you just made a mishire, right? You made the wrong decision. That's okay, right? Life happens, decisions happen. It's all about how do we learn from them, how do we bounce back, and how do we march forward. So if that's a scenario, don't sit on something for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. It will cannibalize your current team. It puts you in a position where you're not able to show a level of assertiveness that you need to have as a sales leader. So if you need to move someone out of the organization, don't sit on that decision, right? Make sure that you've gone through a certain process, you're able to articulate that, and then help that person, right? See if you can be in a scenario where you can help them to get their next role, or give them some advice and meaningful counsel to put them in a position where they can be successful moving forward. I hope this has been helpful in some way. I look forward to seeing you on the next video, and be sure to leave a comment with your thoughts or if you've been through this type of circumstance yourself.